You're listening to
They're gonna call it a hard foul. They're gonna call it a hard foul.
offering in-depth analysis on all things Boston Celtics with your hosts, Jim and Mike Quigley.
Hey everyone, we're starting off your week. We haven't spoken to you for a while. It's been a couple of weeks, and that's my fault, not Michael's. I was down and out with some illnesses. In fact, my whole house had sickness, but I'm on the rebound here, and I'm ready to talk Celtics. And we had quite a weekend to actually talk about. And within that weekend, you certainly had some trends that are concerning for the Celtics team. A great game, I just thought overall even though they lost on Friday night against the Nuggets. It was two heavyweights. Came down to the last possession, which was executed poorly by the Celtics. Things to learn from. I don't think it's a loss to be ashamed of, but a game they could have won. And then the game yesterday against the Denver Nuggets, and Jokic and Murray were fantastic, just out of this world. Where Tatum and Brown were, I think it's safe to say we're subpar on Friday night. And then Celtics rebound, had a great first half against Houston last night, and third quarter kind of rears its ugly head again. They hold on to win in the fourth quarter. Part of it is just their talent, and Porzingis kind of rose up while Houston, just isn't nearly as good. Although I thought Houston dictated, the pace in the second half. They dictated the physicality. And, I didn't think it was the Celtics' best effort by any means. But here we are. I think it's important to, put a benchmark in the season. We're beyond the halfway point by one game. The Celtics have the best record in basketball. They're the number one seed in the East, Mike. But, there are some things that are concerning for sure. And so the temperature of this team, I think it's important to take just not overall in these past two games, but where things stand as we head into the final 40 of the regular season. And with that, I'll let you take it away.
Celtics are certainly the most talented team with their starting five probably in the NBA. And that's been obvious in this first half. We've seen plenty of really good basketball, long stretches of it. And I also think there's concerns that I think are valid for fans, especially with what we've seen in playoff runs the last couple of seasons where there's been questions about maturity issues with this team and how dedicated they are, how focused they are at times. And for me, most recently, the last four third quarters, they haven't scored 25 points. And the last two games, they haven't hit 50 points in the second half overall. And so I think there's some things that we can cover as far as that goes, especially with the pace of play, where they run into issues still where they allow other teams to dictate the pace. And they have opportunities to change that, and they just don't. And so for me, that's something to keep an eye on, especially as we get closer to the playoffs, because my biggest fear is that in years past, the things that the Celtics did in the regular season, the inconsistencies from the regular season, is what cost them in the playoffs. And, these third quarters and execution at the end of games are something that they need to get better at. And so, but outside of that, Jim, they have been terrific for the majority of the season. Porzingis has been an incredible pickup. If anybody doesn't think that he is like an A+ at this point of the season, I think you're just a miserable person. Teams still don't know how to match up with him outside of really Denver. I thought Denver did a good job, but he was really limited to perimeter play against Denver. But, even last night, the Rockets are just throwing like 6'4" and 6'5" guys on him in the fourth quarter. Even with Tatum and Brown not shooting well for the second game in a row and really being kind of zeros on offense, they were still more concerned, I think, about Tatum and Brown getting to the hoop than they were about Porzingis beating them up on the post. So that pickup has just been terrific. And then the opportunity for Derek White to play more this year and be a bigger part of the team has obviously made this team better offensively. One other thing that concerns me about this team on the defensive end is they cannot cover guards. And it's not just a trend now, it's where they struggle. If they play a good guard like Jamal Murray, Tyrese Maxey, what have you, Damian Lillard, they're giving up big night after big night after big night against these guys. And these guys get whatever they want. I don't know if it's a scheme thing or a talent thing, and our guards just can't cover quick guards. You know, even Jalen Brunson gets off. Even last night, the guard from Houston, who's one of the most inconsistent shooters in the NBA, was getting whatever he wanted. So it's something to, as the trade deadline comes up, I don't know if that's something that they want to think about. But yeah, those are my kind of all over the place thoughts about the Celtics. My ADHD, unorganized brain just like throws like 5 million things at you.
Don't worry about it. So let's get to the third quarter. We can get to the gods, and certainly get to, where we think this team is headed. I guess, the thing that just disturbed me, especially over the last couple nights, in the third quarter, because that's kind of front of mind, and I know we could examine other ones, but I just thought it was lazy offense to start the thirds, to the extent of where it felt like it was coming down one pass three or off a screen three. There was no ball movement. There was no huge effort to get paint touches, especially against Denver. You have mismatches all over the floor. There's ways you can create that, running with Porzingis, setting screens for White, or, getting Al into the game. I didn't feel like through the first 3-4 minutes of that third quarter, they had an open three. I thought they just settled, or an open shot, and they just settled, and they were forcing things. And that, is just troubling to me. And I thought the same thing you saw for the entire third quarter against Houston was a team that, just continued to take the quick shot. You had I think, a 15-point lead coming out of halftime. You played a really brilliant first half. You managed the minutes of your superstars in that first half, where Brown and Tatum, I thought, sat the last 4 or 5 minutes of that second quarter, and they just rolled with what they had. Porzingis had it going on. There were ways to find mismatches. I thought the refs let Houston play a little bit more than they should have defensively, but still, there were things you could have done. And again, I just felt like there was a lot of settling. You came out the first few possessions. I think Porzingis threw up a quick three. Tatum and Brown jacked him up. It was just, and there was zero paint touches at all. And I feel like that leads to quick and easy shots for the opponents, and it gets them going. And you saw the same thing against Indiana a couple weeks ago, where those guys just kind of, stop feeling good quickly, because the Celtics have to be in retreat because they're coming off of long rebounds. The defense looks like there's a lack of effort, where it's just not in the rotation that you want to be in, or you're a little bit disorganized, and these teams are so talented that they're going to get away good shots, and it causes you problems. And I feel like certainly that's where the game was lost in that third quarter span, to start the third against Denver, where you just allowed them to gain some momentum. And look, I know you had some tough breaks in that game. You had the end of the first half where you had like 5 offensive rebounds and a lot of really good looks, and you were stuck at 61 for a while, and or 59 or whatever it was. And that's tough. And then in the fourth quarter, the same exact thing happened again. And you missed a lot of really good looks. And it wasn't
and then the over the back call on Porzingis was huge.
Yeah. And I didn't feel like it was a case where your entire third quarter was crap. But you set the tone with how you came out in those first few minutes, offensively. And they're just too good for that. And it shouldn't happen. And it's a bit of a trend. And I guess what was so disappointing about Denver is that it happened at home against an elite team, where you've obviously made a conscious effort that you won't you that home court really matters. And I don't know. That's just been it's
They're a
been
bit,
really disappointing, to me.
they're a bit, yeah. I agree with the word disappointing. They're a bit sluggish right now over their last 10, even though their record's 7-3. There's been a lot of holes in the second half offensively where
Mike, can I say
they're
one more
not.
thing just to
Oh, sure.
emphasize this
Yeah.
point? They went in 19-0 second chance points against Houston. They lost the second chance point battle 6-2 in the third quarter. And a lot of that is you don't have the defensive rotation like you did in the first half. You were just settling and you're not making them work, and all they got to do is turn around and box out and get the ball instead of having them scramble, then being in position to get those offensive rebounds. Those aren't by accident. That's because you force them to move defensively. That's why they got so many against Denver. Even when they were missing shots, it was good offense when they were missing shots against Denver. It was really good offense. It was just bad luck. Against Houston, it was not good offense. The first 4 minutes was not good offense against Denver. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought that kind of really showed how much that offense was stuck. That stat there.
Yeah. The one concern I had with Denver, well, there was a couple. I thought the offense, they did get good looks. They missed a lot of open shots, but they also played with the pace that Denver wanted to play with. And there was one possession in the fourth quarter where Aaron Gordon was complaining and yelling to his coach to put on the green light and challenge the call of an out of bounds play, which the Denver coach probably should have, but he didn't. And the Celtics are walking the ball up, and all five guys on Denver are like in a slow jog getting back, looking at their coach, expecting them to turn around and challenge this call. And the Celtics are just not focused enough to understand that if we run here, it's an easy hoop, or we're going to get a good look, or we're going to get to the basket. Tatum's walking the ball up real slow, similar to last night against Houston. I thought the pace against Houston sucked. And it's that lack of detail that I don't understand why it's missing. Tatum had one possession against Denver. It was a crossover right to the hoop and a dunk on Aaron Gordon. And it just felt like they were settling to not be more efficient as how often they're going to go to the basket, how often they're going to run off rebounds. And it allowed for Denver to kind of just walk the ball up and let Murray and Jokic do their two-man game, where the Celtics obviously didn't have any answers, which I don't know if anybody in the NBA does.
Yeah.
But you got to make Denver run. You got to pick up the pace. You can't fall into that trap. And they've done it a couple times this year where against Golden State they had a lead, and then they fell into the trap of trying to play like Golden State plays. Last night in the second half. And then the attention to detail stuff, that offensive rebound by Michael Porter Jr. in the fourth quarter, running from the opposite side, the weak side of the court to come in and get that offensive rebound. Nobody boxed him out. You had Al Horford and Porzingis both out there together. These are just huge mistakes that they got to clean up against these good teams. And at the end of the day, Jim, if your stars don't show up against the champs, you're not going to win those games. You don't beat the champs with role plays. And Tatum and Brown, they didn't have it. I think that's a big part of the reason they lost. If they hit some shots, that's a different game, obviously. I still think the Celtics can be better than Denver, but I do think there's some things that they got to clean up as far as their lack of intensity and their lack of effort.
I didn't think it was intensity and effort. I thought it was execution. I thought
Focus.
They fell asleep on that offensive rebound, but I didn't think it was an effort thing. I thought it was, Tatum missed a layup, and then Tatum at the end of the game, and this is like, it's concerning, the execution part for you superstars. He gets the ball with 5 seconds to go, and it's not a great pass, but he shoots it with 3 when he could have bumped him again and got to the spot that he wants to get so he can hit his patent and fade away. Instead, he let kind of Caldwell Pope dictate where he was going to go on that last shot. To me, that is, you're a great player. 5 seconds is a lot of time. And it just felt rushed. The layup felt rushed. Jaylen Brown missing free throws.
Yep.
It's, we've seen it a lot in big moments. Whereas you look on the other side, I thought Murray was covered well. Like a lot of that fourth quarter, I thought he was covered well. And he was just making shot after. In fact, the one he missed was the only one he missed, I felt like, was wide open.
Wide open.
Above the break
Yeah.
three, I mean, but other than that, like White had a hand in his face, and Brown had a hand. These weren't uncontested shots. It was just one of those crazy games. And look, I think the effort on offense was good. They only had 2 turnovers. That's it. But again, to your point with pace, they controlled it in the first half. They were running. They had multiple fast break points, and I think they only had 4 in the second half.
Second half, yeah.
So like it got bogged down, and I think a lot of that had to do with how they started the half. Again, it's such a trend.
Because
one last thing, Mike, I wanted to add about that game, and then you jump right on in. We saw earlier in the season where they went to different things to close, and it really impressed me. I remember one game was like Holiday Porzingis 2-man game, and Tatum and Brown were okay with it. Down the stretch of this game, you didn't see much of that, and I was really surprised when they brought Holiday back in actually and took Al out, because I thought when the offense ran through Al, they got whatever they wanted, and I know they were still missing in the fourth running through Al, but there were still great looks, and the ball was popping. I felt like in the last 2 minutes when he came out, they kind of became predictable with that they were just going to Tatum, and we're going to see what happened. And I thought Al was great through the majority of that game, and I thought he was their best option to cover Jokic too. You never have a great option, but I thought he was their best option, and I was kind of surprised down the last few minutes of that game he was on the bench.
Yeah, and I'd love to see some more creativity at the end of the games. We don't just have to go to Tatum every single time in these situations.
Yeah.
They have enough talent on the floor that they can draw something up to get somebody a wide open shot, where they use Tatum and Brown as the decoys, and they never do it. Which I think that it's mixing it up a little bit is going to make it harder for teams to scheme against you in the playoffs. Even if you don't make the shots here in the regular season, at least make teams think about it, that, hey, they might go to Derek White here, or they might run something to get Porzingis the ball here on the post at the end of the game, rather than, hey, guys, all they're going to do is clear it out and give it to Tatum. He's going to shoot a fadeaway. Because that's kind of what their offense is in these situations when they're down by 1 or 2 points, and Tatum does execute sometimes, but I think they could get more creative in these situations. At the end of games in particular, the use of timeout sometimes too. Tatum got that layup that he missed, but there's been other games this year where they've gotten the rebound down by 1 or 2. They have a timeout in their pocket, and they don't call one. And then you're looking at them like they got 6 seconds left in the shot clock, and it's obvious they're not going to get a good shot off, and they still don't call the timeout. I think there's a lot they could work on at the end of the games here in the second half to prepare for the postseason.
Yeah, so what's interesting about the end of that game, too, so they get the ball with 16 seconds left, they call a timeout, and they draw something up, and I'm trying to remember what it looked like, but Denver took away their first 2 reads and just did an excellent job defensively. And I don't know if it was a lack of execution on the Celtics or Denver doing a good job, but Denver had to have something to do with it. And then they call timeout, and there's 5 seconds, which is still plenty of time. And if you look at it, the spacing of the guys, it looked like there was a guy in the corner, and of course you have Derek White above the break because he's inbounding. I'm not sure that was the design play. initially to go to Tatum on the post. It almost felt like that was option 2 or 3, and that Denver took away what they initially wanted to do. And that said, I mean, Tatum still had plenty of time, I thought, to really knock down a shot. I think he got sped up when the pass was high, but I think something. I don't think that was the play, is what I'm telling you. Because if you're going to isolate a guy, you don't have a man in the strong corner, right? You're going to have him cut through to give Tatum more room to operate. So I don't know. I think.
Yeah, I think you're on.
Denver did a good job. Was what happened.
They did that whole sequence, even the possession before the timeout, waiting to foul with 4 or 5 seconds left. Denver's physicality and size on the defensive end played a big part in that game. It allowed them to dictate the pace. They shrunk the court. They help well. They communicate defensively. I mean, they're the champs, right?
Yeah.
So, but the Celtics didn't help themselves. Jaylen Brown missing those free throws. Did it again last night, by the way, in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
This is becoming something to be a little concerned about with him at the end of games. Like, can we trust him in a big moment?
Well, the execution of your 2 stars. It needs
yeah.
I think they want to do well. I think they're trying their ass off. I don't think that's the case. It's like they've been put in spots where I know it was a 1-on-3 or 1-on-4 fast break by Tatum, but he got to the rim. He got to the rim with a clean layup and he missed it. He flat missed it. Then he gets the ball down on the post and he rushed it. And it ended up being a bad shot. And then, you talk about the missed free throws from Brown. They need to be better. They need to be better, and they weren't. It's just tough to watch. And even that last sequence of 16 seconds to go, the Celtics should find matchups against Denver. Denver does not have the guys to match up with what the Celtics have. They don't have the bodies to do it. Especially in the half court because of Jokic. You should be able to take advantage of him with Porzingis. And they did earlier in the game. And then I felt like they stopped going to it. Or with Al out there as well. And so, hey, those 2 guys, and you hit on it, you texted it, Tatum and Brown, they need to be better in those spots. And then there's been times this year where Tatum certainly has been better. I mean, going into that game against Denver, he was playing amazing. I thought he was the reason they won down the stretch in Indiana. That first road game.
Minnesota.
Yeah, Minnesota, he was exceptional down the stretch. So it isn't like he's been missing all season long, but when you have these really big games and your 2 big stars fall flat, you're going to have PTSD and think back to the playoff misses, without a doubt.
Definitely. So, Jim, I know getting to the end here, did you have 5 questions for the pod today?
Yeah. So let's start off. You ready? What team in the East do you fear the most?
The team in the East that I fear the most is still the Milwaukee Bucks.
Really?
No, it's not. It's not the Milwaukee Bucks. It's the Miami Heat. And I don't care what their record is. I don't care what their seed is. I don't care who's healthy and hurt. The Miami Heat are the kryptonite, and the Celtics are going to have to overcome them at some point in the playoffs this year to get over the hump. That's just a fact. They'll play them. They're going to meet in the playoffs, and the Celtics are going to have to overcome that.
You want to know who
That's my biggest fear. It's the fucking Miami Heat.
That makes sense. I don't want to see them in the playoffs, but this is going to surprise you. You know what team I fear the most?
Philadelphia?
Yeah. I just do.
Yeah,
I feel like they're managing Embiid to a point where they want to make sure he is, not mothballs by the time the second round comes around like it has been in the past. The question is whether he can change his style of play to be more like Jokic and less like Harden, come playoffs because I always feel like that really hurts him. But more than that, I think Maxey has just risen up his teammates. The way he's playing, you talk about pace, Mike. If he didn't play with Embiid, he would be, getting the same flowers that Halliburton is getting. He's just been amazing. He can drop 40 on any given night. And I feel like the pace he plays with has really helped out Tobias Harris. It's helped out some of these, wing players who really aren't that good, like Batum and Morris. And he just, and Melton is better than, he's been one of the more improved players in the entire league. So I just think that's a team. I think they're different this year. And if you listen to this pod over the past few years, you know how I felt about Philly, whether it was the Ben Simmons or James Harden version. I've never respected them. I think it's different. And I think they're clearly the second best team in the East. I think they're better than Milwaukee. And I don't think the distance between them, the gap between them and the Celtics is all as big as people think it is. So
I don't either, Jim. I don't think the gap between the Celtics and the top three teams in either conference is like huge. I think the Celtics got a ton of talent, but they've just shown in the past that they just didn't have it when it came to getting over the hump, and that's the biggest thing for the Celtics.
And the Sixers, people. Right? Both teams. Yeah.
Well, Sixers can't even get out of the second round, right? Yeah. I mean, the Celtics have been on the doorstep a bunch of times, like right there. Yeah. Whether it's the bubble or 2 years ago, actually in the NBA Finals last year. You can't go down 3-0 to a team. I know Tatum got hurt in Game 7, but you can't go down 3-0. You can't have Grant Williams talking shit to Jimmy
against a team that you're vastly superior to. Yeah. No, you can't. But
the thing about Milwaukee. Oh, go ahead.
No, go talk about Milwaukee because that's what I was going to touch on.
Milwaukee is they're such a nightmare defensively of how bad they are. Like they're so bad defensively. Yeah. But what scares me about Milwaukee is that if you get into a track meet with them and it is just high scoring games back and forth, that 2-man game is really scary at the end of games. And you saw the way the Celtics struggled against a good 2-man game against Denver. Man, like if Milwaukee could ever figure it out defensively, if they make a trade at the deadline, they bring in a wing that can defend. That they're still really scary to me. Just facing a Game 7 against Damian Lillard and Giannis. I mean,
sure.
They can beat people.
I think they are not built for the playoffs. I just don't think they're built for the playoffs. The way there's so many holes with them defensively. I know they have a really good 2-man game. But you can just kind of focus your defense and really build it just towards playing them. I don't really have any faith in anyone else in that team beating you. I think they're just really limited role players. And it just, you want to, it reminds me, and obviously they're more veteran, and so they're better in this sense. But in a lot of ways, it reminds me of the old Sixers teams where you have a couple really good players that can beat you different ways, but you have so many limited players that you can just find whatever matchup you want, and they're going to hurt you on one side of the court or the other. And in the playoffs, oh man, the margin for error is so small that it can kill you. Like, would you be shocked at all if Miami dropped to a 7 seed and they beat Milwaukee in 5 games, or Indiana took them out in 6 in the first round? Like, I don't even know if that's shocking. It would be an upset, but I don't know if that's shocking the way Milwaukee's built right now.
I would be shocked if Indiana did it, even after this trade. I wouldn't be shocked if Miami did that to anybody in the East. That's just part of the course with that fucking team.
Yeah, I don't know. I am down on Milwaukee. Maybe I shouldn't be as much. I just see they just have too many holes. And I know they just trounced the Celtics, but I think that was
there's a lot that goes into that one.
Yeah.
I mean, fifth game in 7 nights. Like the NBA's, what are you doing? Never mind. I'm not going to go on my rant. I should have done that
No,
a
the
while ago.
Celtics
What's the
clearly
next
didn't
question,
give a
Jim?
shit. They clearly
Yeah.
did not give a shit about that game. The
Yeah.
trade. So let's go to the trades. The Knicks. They trade RJ Barrett, Mr. Canada, to the Raptors, and Emmanuel quickly. They get
Hmm.
back OG Ambanoe. I'm just gonna call him Emoji because I'm gonna screw up the last name. My own mental block. And they've been rolling since. They've been, I think, 8-2 over the last 10 or 9-2 over the last 11.
92, yeah.
They
Yeah.
never, and it hasn't been fluky. Their offensive and defensive net rating has been top 10 during that stretch. So um, they're loaded with good defensive players, and they've built a kind of a tough-nosed team. I still think they're a little bit short when it comes to the other teams, but I think they put them in the position to be the 4 or 5 seed in the East. How do you rate the trade for both teams, Toronto and New York?
I think it was a win-win for both teams, honestly. Um, I don't know how much it really moves the needle for the Knicks, but certainly they needed to make a move because RJ Barrett was having a tough season this year. It didn't look like he really progressed in their system as much as they wanted him to.
Mhm.
OG certainly fits into the kind of defense that Thibodeau wants to play because for a Thibodeau run team, the Knicks were really offensive focused this year and not much of a defensive threat against anybody, especially when Mitchell Robinson got hurt. Now they're playing well on the defensive end. They are 9-2, but if you look at their record, they played a lot of the Wizards and bad teams and whatnot. So we'll see. I think they're the same team as last year in a lot of ways, where they're going to be a tough out, but I don't really see them going beyond the second round. Um, I don't think they match up well with Boston still, even with OG on the team.
Yeah.
They just don't have the scoring power. And the thing with Randall, Brunson's obviously a stud and a superstar. Like not calling him a superstar is disrespectful at this point. But Randall's way too inconsistent to call him an all-star, and that they just don't have that consistent second piece to score the basketball. They have a bunch of guys who are good, but they can beat Cleveland. I don't think Cleveland's done anything to adjust their team to be a better playoff team against the Knicks. They're still not tough enough
No.
against New York. But Boston and Philly, even Milwaukee, I don't think it goes beyond 6. Now
I
for
don't either.
Toronto, the flip side of that, I think that was a great trade for Toronto. I think bringing in RJ Barrett and to see if he's going to work out to play with Scotty Barnes, why not? What do you got to lose? That's a nice piece to get in that trade. Kid was the second pick of the draft. He's obviously got talent. Maybe your system, he flourishes in. So far, he's looked good offensively. So I thought it was a win-win for both teams.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a good trade, and both those guys, if they wanted to move either quickly or Barrett, which I don't think they do, but if they wanted to, they could get something for them. And what's interesting for the Knicks is if they wanted to package for a superstar now, OG and Randall would be 2 enticing pieces to throw in there, right?
Yep.
To a team potentially. So the trade in Indy, Mike Siakam, Pascal Siakam again leaving Toronto. I didn't think he was going to be moved. You had this right. I think he even mentioned going to Indy for a bunch of firsts and Massachusetts' own Bruce Brown. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are it's a good trade for Indy if he's re-signing. If he's not, holy shit, you just gave up 3 first-round picks to make the second round. So I don't know, but one thing I'm excited is it kind of reminds me of the old Phoenix Suns. What we can see here, where Halliburton's playing the role of Steve Nash. I feel like Siakam can play that Amari Stoudemire role. He definitely adds something to that team. The team gets up and down. This is a guy who leads the NBA in isolation points from the top of the key, going straight to the basket in a straight line. He certainly adds an element that makes it even harder to defend them. Um, with Miles Turner's ability to hit threes and Siakam's ability to score inside, and everything Halliburton's able to do, they're going to be a fun team to watch offensively. I still think they're missing something. The Paul George rumors for him to return there next year are interesting if that were to happen. But yeah, I thought it was. I only think it's a good trade for Indiana is if he resigns, and for Toronto, it was a home run.
Yeah, my concerns of what we talked about on a previous pod. I just don't know about the fit there. Siakam kind of slows the game down. I'm not a huge fan of how he plays. I know he had a great year, but the team has sucked. Someone's got to have a great year in Toronto, and it's just going to be interesting. They like to move. They like to push the ball. He does not like to move the ball. The ball just kind of sticks when it gets to his hands. He's an okay rebounder. He's not a great rebounder. He's just an okay shooter. So it does give them the second scorer that they desperately need. But I don't know. And you need isolation guys in the playoffs, no doubt about it. But he's not a creative isolation guy. I actually think he's quite easy to cover in the playoffs if you have a good defender.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting move to me. I'm going to be maybe he changes to fit what they need. That wouldn't be the first time in NBA history. But the way he plays and the way they play, it doesn't feel like a marriage to me that's going to work. But I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Mike, who's the next? Are we done with kind of blockbuster trades before the trade deadline? Or do you think we're going to see another big name to move? This is question 4, and then
I mean, this is the NBA. Somebody's getting moved. I don't know who it is, but absolutely, there's going to be another blockbuster trade. You got to look at Philly, right? Because Philly has all those contracts they got from LA. And those guys are fitting in well. Obviously, Marcus Morris and Batum have been playing pretty good for them. But they're definitely a team to keep an eye on, I think, to see if there's another move. Even Tobias Harris would be a guy in the final year, his contract, that could get moved if they could bring something better in. And then obviously, taking a look at Portland, Jamari Grant is there. He's a guy that brings some scoring that could get moved. But it's hard. It's hard to make trades in the NBA right now. When we think about who's the team to make that upgrade, I think it's Philly or New York in the Eastern Conference that could be doing something. What about you?
Yeah, I wonder if Murray down in Atlanta gets moved.
Yep.
He'd definitely be a helpful piece to somebody. Maybe Philly would be interested in that, honestly. Maybe they got to get away from the idea that they need a superstar scorer and more of a guy that can fill a need in a role. And then, I wonder, it certainly feels like Chicago wants to move Zach LaVine. Whether they actually, they never actually make a move. But although
who
they
wants
should.
that guy?
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Who wants that guy? Is there a place where he could fit in and be helpful? And then, Spencer Dinwiddie, who's not a superstar, but, he's got a contract that's certainly movable down in Brooklyn.
And he's certainly checked out down in Brooklyn.
Yeah, he seems to have checked out.
Yeah.
All right, halfway point of the year. We're going to kind of do these rapid fire season awards. Who's your MVP so far?
In the NBA?
Yeah.
Jokic.
Yeah, same. Jokic. Yeah. Who's your rookie of the year?
No idea.
It's either Wemby or Holmgren. I don't believe you should get the rookie of the year.
Yeah, it's one of those two.
When you got hurt your first year, and so I my vote would be for Wemby. NBA first team, Mike.
Oh, all 5 guys?
Yeah, quickly.
Okay. Jokic, Embiid, Giannis, Tatum, and Steph Curry.
I would go, so probably Jokic, Embiid. I don't know if you can go. So I wouldn't go Embiid. He's missed too many games. Jokic, Giannis, Tatum, Halliburton, SGA.
Yeah, yours is probably better than mine.
And the other
we kept Anthony Edwards off that.
It's tough. There's a lot of good players.
Yeah.
Tough. It's a lot of good players. So I think that covers it for my 5 questions. Celtics on the second night of a back-to-back against Dallas tonight. I don't expect we'll see Porzingis. And, maybe one of Tatum, Brown, or White might sit as well, but I definitely I'd be shocked if we see Kristaps Porzingis tonight against these
I think the
Mavericks.
Celtics are getting blown out tonight.
You think so, huh?
I do. I think they are. I think that they're not playing great right now. It's going to come back to bite them tonight.
It could. It could. The one thing about Dallas is whenever they face a team that's willing to play any defense this season, they turtle. So we'll see if the Celtics come out with some intensity on that end. That could help them even with tied legs. So,
all right,
that's it, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Go C's. See you later.